Honourable Minister, thank you very much for your time. Let's jump straight into it. The United States has placed a tariff of 14% on Nigerian exports. In comparison to other countries, we are not the hardest hit, but this is still considerable. This is still noticeable, and it is expected that there is going to be some form of a relatively negative impact on Nigerian exports, on Nigeria's ability to be internationally competitive when it comes to the official position of the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. What is your position? How are you feeling?
The U.S. is a long-term trading partner, strategic. Most of our exports to the U.S. is oil, and that's under the AGOA right now. So Nigeria is really in quite a good position. We have to also think about our second largest fertilizers, urea, lead. Those are businesses that have been growing in market share. This gives them uncertainty. This gives them a disruption to their operations. So we're working with those types of businesses. We're also looking at our MSMEs. They are not covered by AGOA. It's just about 2%. But for businesses that are US focused, this will be a disruption to their businesses. So we're also working with them to diversify. Nigerians export to over 250 countries. We're very much bullish about the AFCFTA and enabling our exporters to really take full operationalization of that agreement. So those are some of the strategies. Looking across the world as well, as you know, Mr. President has been working on generating investment from different countries across the world since May of 2023. And what that means is that a lot of G2G agreements. So we're working on a SEPA with UAE. We've been working on also with the US, the ambassador. We had a meeting just last week. So trade is a continuum. When you have announcements like this, they're really quite sensational. But for Nigeria, I would say that conservatively, we're in quite a good space. However, this disruption affects the entire world, the entire trading system. And therein lies the danger. We don't want the global economy to go into a recession. We don't want retaliation. You know, Africa is kind of insulated from global trade because we're just less than 5%, like about 3% of global trade. So the players that really dominate, we don't want that retaliation, and then we end up being collateral damage or the unintended consequences. So that's really what the issue is and why it's making headline news.
I am glad that you've mentioned the distinction between retaliation and responding, because naturally Nigeria is your first priority. So when we're looking at Nigeria's ability to be internationally competitive in this way, what are your thoughts? And then if we look specifically at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, do you think that implementation of this agreement has done the work it needed to do to prepare Africa, to prepare Nigeria for an eventuality like this? What are your feelings when it comes to this agreement and different types of collaborations with different international bodies when it comes to positioning Nigeria in the best possible way?
So the good thing is that we're responding, we're not reacting. This has been a priority area since I came into office, operationalizing the AFCFTA. You know that Mr. President has been commended as digital trade champion. We've been pushing our export agenda. We hosted the Secretary General on the 16th of January. We were in Addis, at Davos. I was very bullish about this agenda. So we have had a plan under the 8-point agenda. Item 7, which is where this industry comes to play, speaks to accelerating diversification. So this is an area that we've been looking at for a long time, because this is what's going to help MSMEs. MSMEs are nearly 50% of Nigeria's GDP. And so we've looked at that demographic and we identified the AFCFTA because it speaks to women-led businesses, youth-led businesses. It speaks to informal sector, formalizing it. It speaks to MSMEs and how they can attract foreign exchange by exporting across the continent. So we've identified it as an area that would work for the Nigerian economy. Recently inaugurated the Central Coordinating Committee for the AFCFTA to operationalize, domesticate. Mr. President approved the gazetting of our ECOWAS tariffs, and we're waiting on the procedural work and then to submit to the AFCFTA Secretariat. So this is not new for us, and that's where planning and strategy and prioritization comes in. So when we look at global events. You know that ECOWAS, also the Sahel Alliance states, also came up with something last week. Now the US came up with something. The WTO is also looking at this area. So when you have a strategy that you are implementing, haven't looked at the demographics of your own economy and what would be good for your people. You've heard us speak about digital trade and why, exporting of business services and why, facilitating export for AFCFTA for our MSMEs, looking at free zones, looking at tax reforms. All these things enable the Nigerian economy under this president to respond rather than to panic and react. And so even when we're talking with old friends, talking with new friends, you see that we're here in the UK. The British High Commissioner, we had a meeting. I hosted him on Thursday. Last week is the American ambassador. We've also met with the Chinese, the Brazilians, the Japanese, UAE. We're hosting the first investment summit, Investopia of the UAE in September in Lagos. It's time to really put your trade policy and your investment strategy, investment attraction strategy to play. And it puts you in a position where you can respond with confidence to situations like this.